I asked ChatGPT, what is the best no-theory attacking opening against the Sicilian defense? It fired back the Grand Prix Attack, and this time I tend to agree with the bot. I've been playing it for years, and before I entered the master level, it felt like cheating. You have a very simple, aggressive attacking plan, and most of your opponents have no idea how to handle it. Let me show you just the two variations that you need to know, and after that, you'll be ready to crush everybody. So here, against f4, usually your opponents will pick one of the two setups. They'll either try to expand in the center with e6 and d5, or they will choose the dragon formation, kind of like this, with fianchetto in their bishop. But good news, in both cases, we're going to be using a very similar plan. Let's start with this central break, knight f3, and then I go d5, putting pressure down here. But you don't worry, you don't do anything special. This pawn is already guarded, and you just stick to your plan. Bishop b5, developing a bishop, and pinning this knight. If they capture right here, no problem, you're going to recapture. If they push the pawn forward, again, no problem, we simply retreat the knight back, and after that we continue as usual. Your opponents will often be worried about you potentially capturing this knight and ruining their haircut, therefore they're going to play bishop d7, trying to preserve their pawn structure. And then there is also an important nuance. Usually in such positions you play d3 at some point. But in this particular case you got to be careful, because if you play right here, it's a very common blunder. They've got the move queen a5 with a double attack and you lose your bishop. The solution is pretty obvious. The king retreats to his man cave with a Netflix subscription and tells the queen, you handle the rest. Bonk. Now, your opponent will sometimes play pawn a6, but it doesn't really matter. Again, we don't mind trading this bishop out, because after that you lock the central pawn chain, and therefore it's even good for you that you don't have that light square bishop and you don't need to worry about the bishop being restricted by these pawns. Then your opponent will start developing, and now you start transitioning to your middle game plan. You've got these pawns advanced and pointing towards your opponent king. Therefore, we're gonna attack his king, and particularly his kingside. You can start off by going knight e5, putting pressure to this bishop, and once again threatening to ruin his pawn structure. As he defends it somehow, queen e1 is another key move in the Grand Prix attack. You aim to transfer your queen to the kingside, because we anticipate him to castle there, and your queen from either this position or this position is going to take aim at your opponent's king. Now, this position, there are a couple ways for your opponent to develop, but they all lead to a quite disastrous outcome. If I'm not mistaken, the most played move by black here is bishop d6, which seemed to make sense. Black develops a bishop, attacks your knight. What more can you ask for from a single move? And indeed, it's a great move, but only for you. You're gonna trade off the knight and then have a little snack with a fork. If your opponent develops his bishop to a more modest square, then you play f5, launching your kingside attack. It's a great move, also very common for the Grand Prix attack. You open up this file for your rook, you also open this diagonal for your bishop, your queen is ready to roll, and basically you're launching this really dangerous attack. Along the way, you're setting a very clever trap. It looks like you've just blundered this knight, which is no longer guarded by the pawn, which used to be on f4. And therefore, your opponent may think, hey, wait a second, I can simply snatch this knight in the middle of the board, and let's not forget that a lot of your opponents are national masters of Blunderville. So you continue with bishop to f4 and capture the queen right over here. If your opponent was smart or lucky enough to avoid capturing this knight, then he'll probably worry about this move and will capture himself at f5. But then you recapture, now your rook is very active. It also guards your knight, therefore black can't take it anymore. And once black captures, you continue this maneuver and continue with this shift to the kingside with queen to g3. Now, that already sets it up for a ton of threats. Your bishop is ready to join the party, your other rook is ready to go right here and increase the pressure, your other knight can go forward to f4, and it starts looking a little bit like Nakamura's calculations, which can show you that black is in trouble. Now, if black goes knight d7, trying to trade off this active knight, you continue with your plan bishop h6. As you can notice, we always ignore what your opponent does, pretty much. You just stick to your plan. And now, queen takes g7, checkmate is coming. Black can't move this pawn away because it's pinned. What can he do? Bishop f6 is not going to work. You're going to sacrifice the rook and checkmate him right there. Let's take this back. If g6 is played, which seems like the most common move for black, and also looks like somewhat you're in trouble because, you know, this rook is somewhat hanging, this knight on e5 is also under the attack. Maybe it looks like black is still in the game, but you've got a great continuation, which is knight takes g6. Looks like a knight sacrifice, but not really, because here we open up this attack to his queen. He's got to move the queen out of danger, and usually he'll capture on g3, but now instead of recapturing, you're tossing this in-between play, knight takes e7 with a check. The king needs to move, and it turns out that instead of sacrificing your knight, you've just sacrificed his bishop. Now the king needs to move, and you simply recapture, ending up with an extra piece, a ton of threats, and hopefully an easily winning game. By the way, if these calculations and combinations seem intricate, there are simple ways to learn to find the right moves easily and to visualize these moves with no problems. It's a standalone subject. I've got a free masterclass about that. You can click the link below the video and check it out. The second system your opponents will choose sometimes is going d6 and then fianchettoing their kingside bishop, similar to the dragon variation. But your plan remains to be the same. You go bishop b5, pinning the knight, and after that, whether they neutralize the pin or not, you castle kingside, then you play pawn d3. That is your usual setup. You want the center to be stable so that down the line you can play f5 and expand on the kingside. But for now, they'll do something, let's say pawn a6, attacking your bishop. Again, we don't mind trading it off, and then you start this queen shift to the kingside. After they develop queen h4, they castle, and it's a very interesting position really, because it looks like so far both sides played natural moves that make a lot of sense. But I would say that your position is very close to being winning, just because after you've played f5, you have this really clever and simple attacking plan, and it's very hard for your opponent to figure out what to do against it. Now f5, as we know, opens up this diagonal for your bishop, and you want to bring it either to h6 and trade off the g7 bishop, who's the main defender of the king, like the main bodyguard, or maybe you want to bring the bishop to g5 to put pressure down this diagonal. All right, now black can possibly capture this pawn or just do anything else, right? If they capture, again, you can continue with your main plan, and this capture only opens up the king. Now this file is weak, you can play bishop h6 and similar to the main plan. If they don't capture, do something else, let's say b5, they try to counterattack, you go bishop h6, eliminating the main defender. If they try to counterattack, you could easily retreat the knight back, but in this position your attack is so strong that you can even ignore it altogether and just continue with your own plan. Knight g5, bring the knight into play, potentially eyeing these squares, and after black captures your knight, again, like they're trying to do something on the queen side, but it's just too slow. You trade off on g6 so that your rook is now involved into the attack. Then you trade off the bishop, and after that, there's this final defender that is left right there, and you sacrifice the rook to eliminate the final defender and to get to the king. If they capture it with a pawn, queen takes h7 is mate. If they capture it with a rook, queen takes h7 is almost a checkmate, but it's going to become a checkmate on the next move. Finally, if your opponent tries to get his king out of this trap, then you just continue attacking. If the king comes back, queen takes h7. Still going to be a checkmate, and if the king bravely marches forward, then you've got a way to politely finish the game by saying good night. And if you want to have a clear guide to understand what to do in middle game positions, I broke it down into this guide. Check it out right there.